Apophatic Theology. Apophatic theology, also known as negative theology via Negativa, stands as a unique and contemplative approach to understanding the divine. Instead of accepting what God is, apophatic theology seeks to reject everything that God is not, recognizing the limitations of human language and understanding when it comes to defining the nature of the divine. The term apophatic comes from the Greek word apophasis, meaning denial or negation. This approach often involves using negations or statements of denial to express the unknowability of God. The central idea is that the divine reality surpasses human understanding and language, rendering any positive statements inadequate to capture its essence. The goal is to move beyond anthropomorphic and finite descriptions of God toward a more contemplative and mystical understanding of the divine mystery. Apophatic theology is often contrasted with cataphatic theology, which seeks to affirmatively describe and attribute positive qualities to God. Rooted in the recognition of the ineffable and transcendent nature of the divine, apophatic theology traces its origins to various philosophical and religious traditions. One of the earliest and most influential proponents of apophatic theology is Plotinus, a philosopher associated with Neoplatonism. Plotinus, who lived in the 3rd century CE, articulated a hierarchical worldview that culminated in the concept of the One, a transcendent, ineffable principle beyond all attributes. In his seminal work, Enneads, Plotinus delved into the idea that the ultimate reality cannot be directly described and must be approached through negation and mystical contemplation. Plotinus's influence on later Christian theologians, such as Pseudo-Dionysius, the Areopagite, played a significant role in the development and articulation of apophatic theology within Christian mysticism. Pseudo-Dionysius incorporated apophatic theology into Christian mysticism, writing extensively on the divine darkness and the unknowability of God. Pseudo-Dionysius's work, including symbolic theology and the divine names, became foundational texts in medieval Christian mysticism. He employed apophatic language to stress the transcendence of God, asserting that God is beyond all categories and descriptions and can only be known through a direct encounter that transcends intellectual understanding. The concept of via negativa, or the way of negation, is central to Christian mysticism and particularly associated with the writings of Pseudo-Dionysius the Areopagite. Via negativa involves the denial of finite and created attributes when describing God. Rather than stating what God is, it seeks to express what God is not, recognizing that God's essence surpasses human comprehension. Pseudo-Dionysius the Areopagite, symbolic theology. On the ineffability of God. God is not to be identified with divinity, or mind, or reason, or truth, nor can any other condition be ascribed to him, not even being, not non-being, not number, not order, nor greatness, nor smallness, nor equality, nor inequality, nor similarity, nor dissimilarity. This excerpt shows Pseudo-Dionysius's use of negative language and his emphasis on the ineffability of God, expressing that God transcends all human categories and descriptions. Meister Eckhart, a German Dominican mystic and theologian of the 13th century, is perhaps one of the most well-known proponents of via negativa within Christian mysticism. Eckhart's mystical writings explore the union of the soul with God and the necessity of letting go of all finite concepts to experience divine presence. His sermons and treatises emphasize the need for detachment from created things and the negation of self to encounter the divine within the depths of the soul. Meister Eckhart, Sermon 52. The nameless being of God is alive and fruitful beyond all that can be understood or spoken. So whoever speaks of God as an existent being speaks falsely. That person is seeking God according to likeness, but in God there is no likeness, for God is beyond all things. And so whoever says that God is this or that does not know God. God is ineffable above all expression. Meister Eckhart's practical recommendations are often embedded in his sermons and writings. In his work, The Talks of Instruction, Meister Eckhart emphasized the transformative journey of the soul toward divine union through self-negation, detachment, and openness to the divine presence. Eckhart often emphasizes the need for detachment from the material world and created things. This involves letting go of attachments and desires that distract the soul from a direct encounter with the divine. The mystic teaches that by detaching from the self and created things, the soul makes itself open to a direct union with God. Detachment for Eckhart is not a renunciation of the world, but a liberation of the soul from the impediments that hinder its union with the divine. Eckhart speaks of the birth of God in the soul and the need for the soul to become empty and receptive, allowing God to manifest within. The Cloud of Unknowing is an anonymous Middle English masterpiece dating back to the 14th century, offers profound insights into the mystical journey of the soul and its quest for union with the divine. At the heart of this enigmatic text lies a profound connection with Apophatic Theology, a theological approach emphasizing the ineffability and transcendence of God. Central to The Cloud of Unknowing is the theme of contemplative prayer and the journey of the soul towards union with God. The author employs vivid imagery, urging the reader to enter a state of unknowing beyond the limitations of intellect and language. The concept of the cloud of unknowing symbolizes the divine mystery that transcends human understanding. The cloud of unknowing. For he can well be loved, but he cannot be thought. By love he can be grasped and held, but by thought neither grasped nor held. The author emphasizes the importance of letting go of all thoughts and images, surrendering oneself completely to the presence of God in silent communion. This form of prayer aligns closely with the principles of apophatic theology. While often associated with Western traditions like Neoplatonism and Christian mysticism, the theme of the ineffability of the divine was raised as early as the Upanishads, which were composed over a significant period spanning from around 800 BCE to 200 BCE. The Upanishads, foundational texts of Hindu philosophy, contain passages that emphasize the limitations of language in describing the ultimate reality, often referred to as Brahman. The Upanishads are a collection of ancient Indian texts that form the concluding part of the Vedic corpus. They are considered the culmination of philosophical thought in the Vedic tradition, and are often referred to as Vedanta, meaning the end of the Vedas. The Upanishads explore profound metaphysical and speculative questions, discussing the nature of reality, the self, Atman, and the ultimate reality, Brahman. In the Upanishads, there is a consistent emphasis on the limitations of language and conceptual understanding when it comes to describing the ultimate reality, Brahman. Brahman transcends all dualities, categories, and linguistic expressions. Descriptions of Brahman often involve negations, asserting what it is not. Mandukya Upanishad 7-12. It, Brahman, is all, and it is eternal. It is not anything, and yet it is everything. It has no other cause, and it is the cause of all. It is a mass of consciousness. This passage illustrates the paradoxical nature of Brahman, emphasizing its simultaneous, all-encompassing, and attributeless nature. Kena Upanishad 1.4. That which speech does not illumine, but which illumines speech, know that alone to be Brahman, not what people here adore. Here, the Upanishad emphasizes the inadequacy of speech to fully capture Brahman and directs the seeker to recognize Brahman beyond conventional worship. The Upanishads collectively convey the idea that Brahman, the ultimate reality, is beyond the reach of ordinary language and thought. They encourage a direct experiential realization of Brahman through meditation, contemplation, and spiritual practice. The principle of Neti-Neti, meaning not this, is a central aspect of apophatic thinking within Hinduism, and especially in the Advaita Vedanta tradition. This approach encourages seekers to negate all finite attributes when contemplating the divine. Through a process of elimination, practitioners move beyond conceptual limitations and linguistic constraints to reach a direct experience of the formless and boundless reality that is Brahman. Ramana Maharshi was a revered Indian sage and spiritual teacher known for his teachings on self-enquiry and non-duality, emphasizing the direct realization of the true self beyond the illusion of the individual ego. Ramana Maharshi often recommended the practice of self-enquiry by asking oneself, "Who am I?" In essence, the "who am I" inquiry serves as a form of negation. By systematically denying identifications that do not represent the true nature of the self to reach a state of direct, unmediated awareness beyond the limitations of conceptual thought. In Ramana Maharshi's teachings, the practitioner engages in self-negation, questioning and discarding false identifications with the ego and the transient aspects of the self to realize the unchanging essence of the true self, Atman. The process of self-inquiry involves a continuous process of negating false identifications as they arise. By questioning and discarding each layer of identification, practitioners peel away the layers of egoic attachment. While this process primarily involves the negation of attributes and identifications related to the individual self, and not the attributes and qualities attributed to God, which is characteristic of apophatic theology. However, by denying the attributes and qualities attributed to oneself, practitioners indirectly align with the core tenets of apophatic theology, recognizing the ineffability of the divine. In the profound simplicity of asking, "Who am I?" lies a transformative practice that transcends the boundaries of individual identity and ventures into the boundless realm of the eternal self and the ineffable nature of the divine. Apophatic theology invites a humble acknowledgement of our limitations in understanding the divine. It transcends cultural and religious boundaries, offering a direct, unmediated awareness of the ineffable nature of the divine, surpassing all ascribed attributes, qualities, and verbal expressions.